Hey, Slater Crusaders, America's the greatest country in the world. Thanks so much for being here. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk about masks and kids, and in particular, vaccines and kids. You thought the mask battle was tough enough? Wait until the government's going to force your kids to get a vaccine. What are you going to do about that? We'll talk all about that coming up next. Have you seen the guidance that the CDC gave about summer camps? Give me a break. When will the madness end? We'll talk about that in the next segment. But before we get to that, a school in Virginia has done this already. I'm sure there's other schools across the country that have as well. But what I want to share with you here is the entire state of California. The Board of Education is going to vote on this in just a few days, and it will certainly pass, to eliminate advanced classes for students, in mathematics in particular. No more advanced classes in California. Why? Because they're not equitable. There's not enough black and brown kids in them. So we got to get rid of them entirely. Let's talk about, obviously, the horrific ramifications of this for our country. But before that, we got to talk about equity. We have to define equity properly. So sure, at least how the left defines it, so we know what they're doing. Surely you've seen this cartoon before. They show this cartoon at every single diversity, inclusion, equity seminar that exists. On the left, you have equality, and that little kid can't see over the fence. So what we really need is equity, so that everybody can see over the fence. We need equity. We need equality of outcome, where everyone can see over the fence. Now, to the left, equality and equity are different. Equality is opportunity, is equality of opportunity, right? Equality is equality of opportunity. Equity is equality of results. You with me? Very important. So equality is equality of opportunity. That's what you and I mean. When we talk about equality, we're talking about equality of opportunity. When the left says equity, they're talking about equality of results. When these activists, when you hear the word equity, they're not talking about what you and I are thinking of. They're talking about something very, very different. Now, here's a good cartoon of what's actually going on when the government institutes equity, right? They don't lift everyone up, right? When the government gets in the equity business, they don't lift everyone up. They end up tearing the high achievers down so that now no one can see over the fence. Equity is always pitched as lifting everyone up. This is a video that Kamala Harris put out. This was like a week before the election. Here she is talking about equity versus equality.
It's about giving people the resources and the support they need so that everyone can be on equal footing and then compete on equal footing. Equitable treatment means we all end up at the same place.
Right, so equity means we all end up. It means we all end up at the same place, okay? So that's the philosophical background of what's happening here. Here is the latest of equity in action. California Department of Education, their new mathematics framework, it eliminates advanced classes. Why? Because there's not enough black and brown kids in them, too many white kids and Asian kids. Therefore, it's racist. What's racist? Advanced math classes are racist. I've been telling parents for years, I've been going really hard this last year, get your kids out of public schools immediately. Never send them back to a public school. And I have 1,000 arguments as to why you should never send your kid to a public school. I've never heard a good reason why you should send your kid to a public school. One of the main rebuttals that I get back whenever I tell parents to never send their kid to a public school, one of the arguments I get is, oh, Slater, come on, you're overreacting. They're not that bad. And my kid is in the gifted and talented advanced honors program. So, you know, things are way better for us. And I've said for about a year, I've said, not for long, they're not. Not for long, they're not. They won't exist. I did a segment 3 weeks ago on this very topic. And I did the whole thing, and someone called in and said, oh, my kid's in, and same thing, I just, oh, my kid's in the advanced classes, whatever. The next day, the second biggest school district in San Diego County sent an email out to all their parents saying they're getting rid of, they call it the GATE program, the Gifted and Talented program. They're getting rid of it completely. Okay? It was the next day after we had this conversation. Your school will too. Your kids will not be placed in advanced classes because that would be racist. It's inequitable. So instead, your kids are going to be placed down with the kids who can't read and can't do math, all in the name of equity. The technical term is disparate outcome. So this is to the left, to the woke left, to the anti-racist left. Any disparate outcome is proof of racism. You don't have to prove racist intent. You just have to show an inequitable outcome. Then, boom, it's racist. That's all the proof you need. My favorite example of this is a true story. In San Francisco, it was illegal to jump the turnstile to their train system, their subway, right? You're not allowed to jump the turnstile, right? Well, it turns out more black people were jumping the turnstile than white people. So more black people were getting tickets. There was a disparate outcome of the enforcement of that law. Not the enforcement of the law, there was a disparate outcome of the people breaking the law, right? Therefore, jumping the turnstile, therefore, the law that says you're not allowed to jump the turnstile was deemed racist, and they got rid of it. And now everybody can jump the turnstile equally. Isn't that amazing? Anything that exists that's not equitable in the end is deemed racist. So if you have an advanced math class that has 10 Asian students, 5 white kids, and 3 black kids, it's racist. The class is racist. Too many Asians, not enough black kids. So they just get rid of it. Isn't that amazing? It's happening, well, like I said, a couple school districts I've heard of across the country, this is already happening. Right now, it's statewide in California. It's absolutely coming to your state now because it's all run by the teachers union, and which are owned by the woke left, right? Let me just quote 1 or 2 things here from the math framework, just so you know I'm not making this all up. Such labeling, they're talking about of giftedness, has often led to fragility among students. Oh, fragility. As well as significant racial divisions. Check out this dystopian line. Districts and schools must confront the structural inequities of tracking, that's tracking and ability grouping. So this is testing kids when they're like in middle school to figure out what path they should be on with their academics. The structural inequities, and to strengthen their efforts to support all students learning along a common pathway. Holy cow, that is so screwed up. That's so communist, right? Like a common pathway? Why? Oh, because it creates fragility among students. They feel so bad because there's smart kids over there. Like, what are you talking about? Right, so they say, okay, we're gonna reduce inequities. Okay, great, how? Are you gonna do it by lifting the bottom up, or are you gonna do it by tearing the smartest kids down? Clearly, they're doing it by tearing the smartest kids down, which is insane. I didn't think we would have to go over this, but apparently we need a refresher. The world is run by smart people. In a good way. We need the exceptionally smart. We need them. Do you know how a cell phone works? I don't know how a cell phone works. I own a cell phone. I couldn't make one. I don't know what to do. I don't want C students working at Intel, making computer chips, or working at Apple. Because a C student in math could not make a cell phone. So what if instead of all the engineers at Apple and all these other brilliant minds at tech companies, what if we didn't allow them to be brilliant? What if we didn't push them and give them those advanced math classes? Would we be as prosperous where we are right now? Of course not. It took brilliant people to invent a cell phone and then to keep making them better and better and better. It's not C students. C students in math don't work at SpaceX, right? They're not launching rocket. Like a C student didn't make this vertical landing happen at SpaceX, or make advanced weaponry for our military, or invent vaccines. C students don't do that. Equality should not be the goal. Encouraging excellence should be the goal, especially in those who excel. Yes, of course, we want to lift everyone up. And if equality shouldn't be the goal, if things become more equal because we do things that lift up the lowest achievers, and in the end, things are a little more equal, like, okay, fine. But the real goal should be, like, equity is not the goal. Like, that should be like a nice byproduct maybe. The goal should be to lift the bottom up, of course, but also to give the advanced, super smart people every opportunity that we possibly can so that they can excel for the benefit of them and for everyone else who can benefit from their genius as well. And what's so frustrating about this is we know this. We know this in our nature. Inherently, we know this. About excellence, we love to watch the best, right? Competition is natural in us. Understanding and recognizing merit and excellence is natural in us, and it needs to be encouraged. And it is in almost every realm of life until the woke get involved and turn everyone into a wimp. This is Clarence Thomas back in 2000. He was asked about justice for all, and here's what he said.
One set of rules for everybody. We're in this thing now, this sort of hysteria, where everybody is claiming a different set of rules. I don't know how that's justice. I don't know how to do that calculus. I don't know how you all played Grambling last week. Well, why didn't you give Grambling some points? You beat them 52-0. Is that justice? Why didn't you change the rules midway through the game and give them a chance?
So good. We can give a million examples of this. America did not invent the atomic bomb first and win World War II because of a bunch of average math students. So what happens if we didn't have those geniuses working on the atomic bomb? Who would have won the war? And then where we would be? And you could do this with everything. The best movies are not written by average writers. The most beautiful pieces of art are not made by average artists. The NBA is not made up of middle-aged, out-of-shape guys at the YMCA, right? Like that's the most beautiful piece of art in the world right there by Michelangelo. Like you go to the NBA to watch that, right? No one's watching the middle-aged, out-of-shape guys miss layups at the weekend rec league, at the Boys and Girls Club, right? You know what, right? And we get this. We need people who excel. And the left hates the idea of people excelling for a lot of reasons, but just go right to probably the most base root of it all, I'm jealous. I'll end with this. There's a book by Kurt Vonnegut. It's a short story by Kurt Vonnegut. It's called Harrison Bergeron. And it's about the year 2081 when the 211th, 212th, and 213th Amendment to the Constitution were passed. And these amendments say that everybody must be fully equal in every way. Right? So it says, all men are created equal. That's what the Constitution says. So let's really make sure that all people are equal in every way. It's a dystopian short story. So no one can be smarter. By the way, everyone's created equal. That means in the eyes of God, right? All men are equal in God's eyes. Not all men are the same height, right? So in this dystopian future, no one can be smarter, no one can be better looking, no one can be more physically capable than anyone else. And there's a handicapper general who works for the government who goes around and forces beautiful people to wear masks and forces intelligent people to wear these headphones that play super loud sounds, ear-piercing sounds in their brain so that they can't think clearly. Harrison has to wear these thick glasses that give him headaches all day because he's so smart. We can't allow people to use their unfair advantages of their looks or their brain power or their strength. Strong people are weighed down with heavy weights around their necks. Kurt Vonnegut saw where we were going, and we're a big step closer. Because unfortunately, the true story is, this is what we're doing to our kids now. No more advanced classes in school. Are you okay with that? Are you for that? In the name of equity? Coming up next, speaking of school, you thought the mask battle was enough? Strapping a mask on your kid for no reason? It's about to get way worse when the government mandates your kids get a vaccine to go to school. What are you going to do? Talking about that next. True story. Mike Slater, Spread the Word. Hey, Slater Crusaders, are you going to give your kids the COVID vaccine? You thought this whole battle in our country over masks was contentious? Wait till the government mandates that your kid has to get a vaccine in order to go to school. What are you gonna do? You need to have this conversation now with your family, because there are going to be states, the ones run by Democrats, who mandate it. And it's gonna be your kids have to get a vaccine or else they're not gonna be allowed to go to school. And even if you live in a red state, there's gonna be school districts, right? School districts in red states that are gonna mandate COVID vaccines as well in order for your kid to go back to school. What do you do? What are you gonna do? You have to think about it now, because the day's gonna come, I promise you. So I'm not anti-vax. My kids are vaccinated. This vaccine is different. So let's talk about this COVID vaccine. If you're over a certain age, when it relates to COVID, you absolutely should get the vaccine. If you're of a certain risk category, you should definitely get the vaccine. If you are of a younger age and you want it, okay, like whatever, go ahead and get it, it's fine. I have no reason to believe that, I see nothing that would lead me to suggest you don't get the vaccine. If you want to get it, you go ahead and you get it. You're an adult. Kids, different story. Different story. First part, different risk category. Kids don't get sick from COVID. Thank you, God, that this is true. Be a totally different calculus if kids were getting sick and dying from COVID. Kids don't get sick from COVID. We talked about these numbers yesterday. There's been 550,000 COVID deaths in this country, about 550,000. 450 are kids under the age of 18. 450. More kids die from the flu every year, and then of course, as you see here, about twice as many from drowning, et cetera, et cetera. Kids don't get, and I wonder how many of those kids, those 450 kids had some other immuno disease or cancer patients or something like that. Kids don't get sick from this. Kids don't spread it in any meaningful way. And still, the CDC says kids need to wear masks outside at summer camp? You kidding me? It's because of the science, right? Oh yeah, the science. Look at this picture of kindergartners. Is that not the saddest thing you've ever seen? That is so depressing. Strap a mask on our kid, keep them away, stay in this hula hoop, don't get out. It's not safe, kids. It's not safe to breathe the air of your fellow classmate. These are people of science who are mandating this. Come on, enough of that. But it's going to be these same anti-science people who mandate that your kids get the vaccine. Here's how I look at the cost-benefit analysis of this. And I want to see if you think like this too. I mean, we all do cost-benefit analyses all the time with everything constantly all day. We probably do it a little differently, but here's how I think about it. So my mom, she's over 70. She's got some other health issues. If she got COVID, it could be very bad. So let's put it on a scale of 1 to 10. Her risk of COVID and the problems that would potentially happen if she got COVID are very high. Let's call it an 8. She's an 8 out of 10 COVID risk. Not good. Any side effect that she may have from the vaccine, short or long term, it's like a 2. So my mom, definitely, you got to go get the vaccine. No doubt about it. And she did. And she'll be seeing her grandson for the first time, her 15-month-old grandson for the first time in just a couple weeks here. She's going to be flying out to see her grandson. Perfect. No-brainer cost-benefit analysis. Fantastic. Okay? Now, my 4-year-old, he has 0 risk from COVID. None. No risk. Right? My mom was an 8 on the COVID scale. My son, no risk. No risk of getting it, no risk of getting sick from it, certainly no risk of dying from it, and cannot spread it to anyone else of consequence because anyone else of consequence has the vaccine. So the threat related to COVID in my son and daughter and younger son are nothing, 0. So let's be conservative and say that the long-term risk of a completely brand new vaccine in a child, let's say on a scale of 1 to 10, the risk is a 1. Let's just say it's a 1. Let's say in 50 years, there's some sort of side effect from this, maybe. If the risk of the vaccine is a 1, it's not worth it. The math doesn't work out. Why would you do it? There's no risk. Why would I give the vaccine when there's no risk of the thing that you're vaccinating against? Why would I do that? Why would I inject my kids with an unknown thing, which you have to admit it is. You must admit the vaccine's an unknown thing. You can't say that you know what the long-term side effects of it are. It's only been around for a year. So why would I inject an unknown thing into my kid to prevent something that is of zero risk? Hypothetically, this is not the case, but if COVID affected kids, and let's say my kid had a risk that was like a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, the 5 of getting very sick or dying, well then yeah, that's a different calculus. Then it may be worth it. But that's not the situation. It's a 0. There's no reason for kids to get the vaccine. The FDA very soon is going to approve the Pfizer vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds. And I guarantee you, California will require them to go to school, and I'm sure other states will as well. It's going to be a big problem. And I'm very bothered by even the lack of respect, right? Not even a nod of, hey, listen, everyone, we understand that you may be cautious about this as a parent and to your kids. Maybe we should wait a little while longer before we make any sort of mandate. Maybe we'll wait a year before. No, it won't be. It was a blanket mandate right now. You can't go to school until your kid gets vaccinated. This is very different than the polio vaccine. Polio vaccine's been around for 70 years. This is not. Let me make 2 more points. I'll do this one at the risk of complicating things a little bit here. I want to make the point that we always engage in cost-benefit analyses. We always do it. And it's very unnatural for the government to tell parents, don't do a cost-benefit analysis for your own kid, right? So we're always doing cost-benefit analysis, and the government comes in and says, nope, we're doing it for you. We're doing the cost-benefit analysis for you, parents. That's not good. So here's my analogy. This weekend in San Diego, a boat from Mexico crashed into the shore. It had 32 people on it, 32 illegal immigrants. 4 people ended up dying. So people were right there. It's in Point Loma. It's just a nice little area. And they were just on the beach there. And they saw this boat thrashing around, and they thought it was just anchored out poorly and it was getting too close to shore. But then when it started slamming up against some rocks and people started pouring out of it, right? We were like, oh, something's going on here. So imagine you are on the beach on this cold, windy day, and you see this happening. Do you swim out and help them? Right now, imagine yourself right here. You're on the beach, right there. You see this happening. Do you go out there and help people? Now, as you're answering this, your brain is making a cost-benefit analysis. It's weighing all these different things in real time. So the first thought is, are you healthy enough to even try it? Are you healthy enough? Are you fit enough to swim out there against those waves and current? It's a powerful ocean to even do that. Or are you just going to be another casualty as well? Is that situation too dangerous for you to go out into, for anyone to go out into? Okay, we got to think that through that. Also, just for a thought experiment, who's in the boat? You don't know at the time that they're illegal immigrants. Does that make a difference? You say, no, sir, that doesn't make a difference. I would go out and rescue those people no matter illegal immigrants or American citizens. Okay, let's say that was a boat full of MS-13 gang members. Would you be less likely to save them? Would you be less likely to risk your life to go out and save them? What if they were a boat full of illegal immigrant 5-year-olds? What would you do then? Is it different than if they're MS-13 gang members or no? What if it was your child on that boat? What if they were dogs? What if that boat had 32 dogs on it? Would you go out and risk your life to save the dogs? What if on that boat there were beetles? A bunch of bugs for research purposes, beetles. There's beetles in cages. You're gonna go rescue the beetles? Right, so I say this just, do you feel your brain working? Your brain's like, geez, okay, well, it was pretty windy there. It was pretty risky. No, my kid, definitely. Oh, and then you're like, well, I wouldn't do it if they were MS-13 gang members. But and then you're like thinking like the moral implications of that. Like, oh, does that make me a bad person? Or is it right? So you're thinking through this. Your brain's working. This is good. You're weighing different factors to decide what your action's going to be. This is what humans do. And this is what the government wants you to stop doing. They want you to stop doing this and say, trust the experts. Whatever you say, CDC, I'll turn my brain off. I've been so discouraged by the people who just turn their brains off when the CDC says to do something. All right. Does that make sense? Don't let the government turn off your brain and your natural ability and responsibility to do a cost-benefit analysis when it comes to your children's health. Last point. How do you fight against this? Came across a letter that a woman wrote to her daughter's college. There's a lot of colleges that have already required vaccines in order to go back to campus. So this is already a thing in colleges, and it's going to be, of course, K through 12 as well. And I love this woman's response because she uses the left's own language against them. It's absolutely brilliant. Logic doesn't work, right? Logic and reason and facts and data don't work. Risk analysis doesn't work. You got to come at them with, well, the same weapons they use against you. So she had 5 points. She said, first, you can't mandate this because this violates the principle of bodily autonomy. That's the argument that the left makes about abortion. You can't tell me what to do about abortion. I have bodily autonomy. So use it against them. And consent as well. You don't have my consent to do this against my body. So use the my body and bodily autonomy argument against them. Second argument she makes, that mandated vaccines, it's discriminatory, ableist, sexist, and elitist. Now we can actually talk about how it's all these things, but it doesn't really matter. You just throw those accusations at them and they'll be, I don't want to be ableist. Third thing, she says women have some unique side effects of vaccines, of these vaccines. So this mandate, it's sexist. You're putting undue harm against women. Why are you doing that? Why are you sexist by mandating this vaccine? Fourth thing, goes back to our last segment, equity. Why are vaccines being given to affluent white men and women when there are the globally impoverished in India and other places that do not have vaccines? And also when there's marginalized people right in America who have not yet received a vaccine, and you're going to mandate it on rich white children? Wow, that's not very equitable of you. And then her fifth point is, the left loves using this line, don't be on the wrong side of history. I just say that to them and they'll be, oh, I don't know. Brilliant, right? Really good stuff. So here's the true story. She writes this, again, just those 5 real quick, just so you can remember these. It's bodily autonomy, it's discriminatory, ableist, sexist, and elitist. It's sexist because it goes against anti-women. It's not equitable, and don't be on the wrong side of history. Here's what she said. She said, if we allow institutions, and K through 12 schools and institutions, to subvert medical consent with such flimsy justification by redefining statistically negligible risk as an emergency, what can they not do? And for what benefit? Prepare for this battle now. I assure you, forced vaccinations on kids are coming. What will you do? I want to go into more detail coming up next on masks and how foolish these mask mandates are. Do that next. True story, Mike Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Study Crusaders. So the last segment was previewing a battle that we're going to have to face when it comes to forced vaccines on kids. But we still haven't won the mask battle yet. I still see people in their cars alone wearing masks, people going for a jog alone on the sidewalk wearing masks. I saw a dad with his 2 young kids playing basketball in a park with no one near them wearing masks. It's insane what people are still up to. I see some people starting to push back. This is a school board meeting in Utah where some parents are upset about the mask mandates, rightfully so. Here's what happened.
Not only is there no proof that masks are the solution, there's not even proof that it's a good trade-off.
All right, we're actually going to close. You haven't signed up, ma'am. We're going to close citizen
You let a
participation.
senator come up here and speak in the name of my children who you guys are abusing? Are you serious?
Yep.
You will listen to us.
Nope. We've had our citizen participation. We're going to follow. We've had that. Okay.
Wrong. You all know it. I told you.
All right.
Winter, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
I'll second.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Like, oh, let's get out of here. Doug Badger from the Heritage Foundation wrote a great article, The CDC and Mask Mandates, Unmasking the Truth, from Heritage Foundation. Doug, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Mike. How are you?
Really good, Doug. Let's run through this article here because I want the facts and I want the numbers and I want the studies and I want the data so that we can go and spread the word. So what is the CDC data telling us from their research?
Yeah, I think there are a couple things to say here. Obviously, emotions run high on this issue, as that segment just showed. I mean, there is evidence that masks do provide some source control protection. That is, if I have the disease and don't know it, the mask may make it less likely that I will transmit it to others. There's not strong evidence that masks protect me against getting infected. In fact, the only controlled study that was done of this in Denmark involving 6,000 people found that there was no significant difference among people who wore masks and didn't wear masks in getting infected with the coronavirus. So masks have some value, but perhaps not quite what people sometimes think they do. Secondly, there's the issue of mask mandates. What happens when the government says, well, you have to wear masks, or I don't know, we'll do something bad to you if you don't? The CDC published a study last November that compared counties in Kansas that had mask mandates with those that didn't. They concluded that those with mask mandates had performed better, that infections actually went down. Two of my colleagues at the Heritage Foundation, Kevin Diaratna and Norbert Michel, took those CDC data and tried to replicate them, and they didn't match up. In fact, what they were showing was that infections increased in the mask mandate counties over that period of time, not decreased. They finally got CDC to issue a correction, but the correction they issued was, well, our study didn't use the most updated data. What they didn't say was that when they did use the most updated data, it did not produce the results that they claimed in their paper. So a little bit of sloppiness on the part of the agency. I wish I could say that was uncharacteristic, that was the exception, but unfortunately, CDC has not really covered itself in glory over the last year or so in their handling of the pandemic.
I have a ton of questions. So let's go back to the first thing you said. So just to be clear, so the suggestion is that masks, if you're sick, masks will prevent some of the spread, but masks will not prevent you from contracting the virus if it's out there?
Yeah, and I'm talking about two different studies. The studies on the so-called source control value of masks, that is to say, if I have it preventing me from, I say preventing, reducing the risk that I will infect others, are based on you shoot aerosols through some cloth material and you measure how far the droplets go and how many droplets get through. The study of do masks protect me was actually in Denmark. You have 6,000 people, 3,000 wear masks, 3,000 don't. You send them out for a period of time, you test them frequently, and you find out that there's no statistically significant difference between the mask wearers and those who didn't wear masks in terms of who got infected. Now, what does the Centers for Disease Control say about that study? Again, the only controlled study that's ever been done of the protective value of masks, they don't say anything. They ignored it. That study came out on November 18. On November 20th was the first time CDC announced, oh, masks protect you against infection. Their science brief that lays out the rationale for their policies. We're now in May. They still have not acknowledged the existence of that study.
And this conversation we're having now also seems like a pre-vaccine world. We're in a post-vaccine world, which I think is extremely different, and I would argue makes masks completely moot. But we only have a minute here, so can you talk to me about the CDC and their incentives that they have? I don't want to put words in your mouth, so I'll just leave it like that. But I see so many people who just say, oh, the CDC says, the CDC says, the CDC says, and that's it. And they just turn off their brain and outsource all of their decision-making to the CDC. What do we need to know about the CDC as we take their recommendations in?
Well, I think you do have to take it with a grain of salt. Now, to their credit, they have said that vaccinated people outdoors don't have to wear masks. And I don't know if you guys saw the clip, but yesterday we had the Vice President of the United States and her husband on a tarmac wearing masks and kissing with their masks on. Now, even the CDC would say that's not following the science. But overall, I would just say that you need to look behind some of the CDC's recommendations, look at their science briefs that present the studies that presumably present the rationale, and the two don't always align.
Doug, I appreciate your work on this. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for going through the data and spreading the word to us so we can spread the word as well. Doug Badger from Heritage. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mike.
Again, all the links and everything, the CDC and mask mandates, unmasking the truth. I would say one thing about the CDC before we go. The CDC has an incentive to always be super, super over precautious. The CDC doesn't want you to eat raw cookie dough. The CDC has always recommended you don't eat raw cookie dough because there's a risk of E. coli. It's not the salmonella from the raw eggs. It's the E. coli from the raw flour. You have a 0.3% chance of getting E. coli. 0.3% chance. Your chance of getting sick from COVID after being vaccinated is 0.0005. Your risk of getting E. coli is 0.3. So the CDC will always tell you to not eat raw cookie dough. Do you eat raw cookie dough? If you wear masks after being vaccinated and put your mask on your kids when they're at summer camp and at national parks, as the CDC said you have to do, even outside of national parks, and you eat raw cookie dough, you're not following the science. True story. Thanks, Slater. Spread the word. Hey, Slater Crusaders. Tomorrow's special is about California and how this state is ridiculous and failing, and why that matters to the rest of the country and what we can do about it. So a little preview of tomorrow's special. Jennifer Van Laar is here. She's the managing editor at Red State. Jennifer, how are you today?
Wonderful.
I'm glad you're here. Why does California matter? I used to live in Tennessee, and on my radio show in Tennessee, we would always look to California. We would never look at, Oregon politics or Arizona, even though everyone from California is moving to Arizona, right? So why does California matter to the rest of the country?
Well, it matters because what happens in California inevitably goes across the country, and the policies get taken everywhere. And like we've seen with Kamala Harris, she takes all of the bad ideas her friends here have come up with and puts them in Joe Biden's ear.
Yeah, all these failed, horrible California politicians fail forward to DC. Their ideas spread and they spread. It's even worse.
Right.
All right, let's talk about why you love California. Why is it worth saving?
Well, it's worth saving because in addition to just it being my home, my family's home for generations, we have such abundant natural resources here. We have the Central Valley that feeds a lot of the country. We have huge gas and oil deposits and other minerals. And we just have an environment where the people that are the dreamers of this country have always come here to chase their dreams and innovate. And to me, it's the epitome of the American spirit.
Yeah, I've always said California is like a microcosm of America. It's like a mini, it's like the best of what America is here. But we're not anymore. All right, it's getting crushed.
Not in any way.
Yeah, give me like a couple, and maybe we'll start one at a time of something that the government's done to screw this up. Because it's not the people haven't screwed this up. These are government policies that have screwed this up. So what's one that comes to mind first?
Well, the overbearing taxes that everyone talks about, knows about, and the regulations. It's not just the taxes, it's all the regulations that go along with all of it.
When you say regulation, I remember reading last year, maybe 2 years ago, they did a study. 40% of the cost of building a new house is regulation. So 40% of the price of a house is paid before a shovel even touches the dirt. That's just regulation that makes everything so stinking expensive. Who does that hurt the most?
It hurts the middle class and the working class because they can't afford the houses that have had those skyrocketing costs because it just makes it unaffordable for everyone. And it's even with industry. Last night, Caitlyn Jenner talked about maybe looking toward desal as a solution for our water problems. And a colleague and I had looked at putting something like that on the ballot in 2016 as a ballot initiative to defund the train and instead do desal plants. And we spoke with the company that did the San Diego desal plant, and they said that they could build twice the size of a desal plant for half the cost in Israel because they don't have those regulations there.
Wow. That's amazing.
Right?
I live down the street from that desalinization plant. I know what you're talking about. No kidding.
Oh, wow.
So, wow, so they could do twice as the size for half the price.
Right.
But just because of environmental reviews and
union labor, having to use union to do it.
Wow, amazing. Not enough people across the country know about AB 5. Can you give us the short on that? It's kind of complicated, but super important because DC, speaking of idea spreading, has the PRO Act, which is the same thing, if not worse, than AB 5. Can you tell me about that?
And it's embedded in the infrastructure bill because they can't get anyone to talk about it otherwise. But what it basically is instead of the assumption being that you have to prove that you're an independent contractor versus an employee, the assumption is that everyone is an employee. So independent contracting, if you're a consultant, a writer, even a lot of different mental health professionals, CPAs, are all going to have to be employees or realtors. This is where it would hit really hard. You couldn't just have independent real estate agents. They would have to be employees, which would be totally not workable. Not only that, the worst part of the PRO Act is it does away with all state right to work laws. So all those states in the South and Midwest that have right to work laws, those would be invalidated. And your employer would have to give your information to the union so the union could even reach you at home to convince you why joining a union is good.
Amazing. How is that even legal? How is that even constitutional? That's crazy.
It shouldn't be.
I got 45 seconds. When would you say the downturn of California began?
Oh, gosh. Probably 15 years ago, right after Schwarzenegger.
Because of Jerry Brown?
Well, yeah, with Jerry Brown especially. But it had started before that because everyone had just started voting by their feelings instead of by policy.
Yeah. Jennifer Van Laar, managing editor of Red State. Thanks, Jennifer. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Glad you're fighting for California. I waffle back and forth. I go, seriously, every day, I'm like, just cut it off and shoot it into the ocean. And then I'm like, no, California's important. We need to fight for it. And it's like, this thing's a lost cause. And I was like, no, maybe there's hope. I don't know. We are recalling our governor, which is something. But I'm not even convinced that we're going to elect any even moderate or conservative. We'll probably elect an even more crazy person than Gavin Newsom. We'll see. That's our special tomorrow, all about California. Mike Slater, true story. Spread the word.